This video is sponsored by Olight. Hi, I'm not a bushcrafter or camper as you can clearly see, but this knife here, the Esee Izula 2, kinda inspires me to get outside and do outdoorsy things. It's also a great platform for customization for Paracord wraps, and this kit version I got came with some really sweet micarta handles, but we won't be needing those today. Now while this knife is small, I think it's still quite capable. First, let's get all our paracord and tools we'll need out on our table. Nice. And I'm working with the knife in the sheath as I'd rather not slice up my hand while working with this guy. And the pattern is so simple, you probably won't even need me to describe what I'm doing. In fact, after you get the cords set up as I've shown, it's just a matter of crossing the cords over on one side and then passing the middle accent back and forth through the middle in between the crossovers. Now to be honest, I haven't gone camping since I was a child in the Cub Scouts, and that was real camping, in a tent, no power outlets, cabins, none of that modern day glamping stuff. Now I don't remember the exact year it was, but it was in the early 90s, and as for the location, it was somewhere in northern Ontario, Canada. The campsite was just a somewhat wide open area, but we made camp right near the tree line where the forest began. So my parents dropped me off in their maroon colored Dodge Caravan, and I was assigned to a tent with my best friend at the time, Greg, and there were supposed to be 3 kids to the tent, so when the scout leaders came by to check if every tent had 3 kids, we actually faked a 3rd kid's voice because they didn't actually open the tent to look inside, so that was pretty funny. I also didn't have a proper foam mat to sleep on, but I had this sort of crappy pink and gray foam mat that my mom used for her 90s exercise classes, and it really wasn't great. Like I could feel the lumpy soil underneath it, but I was a kid, so you know, whatever, it was fine. Honestly, I don't really remember much of what we did that weekend trip, but I do remember it raining the first morning, so our options were kind of limited. I do remember being served spaghetti for dinner, and the tomato sauce barely had any meat in it, and it hadn't been cooked long enough, so it was very metallic and tinny tasting. And all of us boys, we were all laughing at how bad it was, and you know, we tried to see who could eat the most without gagging. So that was funny. Now, of course, we did get to roast marshmallows, and that was definitely the highlight of the trip. So my buddy Greg would intentionally set the marshmallow on fire. He'd blow it out and then pull off the charred outside and then just eat the melted inside. It's just, you know, kind of wasteful, but, you know, hey man, to each their own. I actually lost touch with Greg during high school as we kind of grew apart. But you know what, wherever you are, man, hope you're doing well, and I wish you the best. And one thing I really regret not doing that night was looking up at the stars. I remember unzipping the tent and peering up and out to the sky really briefly, and I distinctly remember seeing so many stars. But of course, you know, like a dumb kid, I didn't really appreciate it at the time, and then I went to sleep without brushing my teeth. And for this part here, if the middle accent cords aren't super tight, you can work some of the excess slack out with a spike if necessary. But anyhow, getting back to what I was saying, the next morning, as I mentioned, it was raining, so we didn't really do all that much. But what I do remember doing was that all us kids found a somewhat steep hill that we took turns making our way down, but it was covered in these really long grass or sort of reeds, and you know, I thought if I ran down it fast enough, I wouldn't fall over. Turns out that theory was wrong. I basically rolled down the hill like a log. I was okay though, as kids are kind of impervious to that stuff. The fact that it was raining and the ground was all wet didn't help one bit, but you know, at least I was wearing a raincoat. Also, come to think of it, we weren't even being supervised at the time. I mean, the scout leaders and the parents that volunteered to help were all just kind of, you know, chilling under that big tarp tent thing as it was raining, and us group of kids, we were just playing that roll down the hill game off somewhere. Like, what if a few of us had just decided to wander off into the forest? Huh. You know, that really does make me think. But I guess times were different back then. I mean, you know, my parents used to just let me ride my bike far away from home, you know, with no way of contacting me, and they would just expect me to be home for dinner. I guess the 90s truly was a special time for kids. Or really any time for that matter before we had smartphones and social media and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure like many of you, I'm a city dweller, but the idea of camping again came up with a friend the other night when we were cooking hot dogs and s'mores over his backyard fire pit. And there's something about that idea that, I don't know, it just really entices me. I think especially in this day and age, getting out into the middle of nowhere, sort of away from all the digital distraction, Wi-Fi, noise, and light pollution. I don't know, I think it's something that's really needed. And I'm sure a lot of you that are, more outdoorsy than me can attest to all that. But I don't know, I really felt this, especially when we were just staring at the fire pit and just not saying anything. I guess that's why we always get lost staring at fires, as that's probably what we did before we had televisions. And really it's just the silence. Silence in this day and age is a gift, and you'd be very lucky to enjoy a peaceful silence in this age of distraction. Ironic, I know, because we're here on YouTube, but hey, if you do get a chance and you don't practice it already, maybe just take a moment of silence to yourself at some point during the day or night if you can. Well, anyhow, during this entire rant, would you look at that? We have our double line wrap on the Esee Izula 2. I really love the look of this wrap, and it really does make me want to get out there and spend some time outside. So maybe I will, but with winter coming, maybe more realistically in the spring. So we'll see. I'd also like to know if any of you all have camping experience. Like, where do you guys go? What kind of experiences have you all had? And what do you guys do when you go out camping? Let me know in the comment section down below. I want to thank you all for hanging out with me today, and if you enjoyed this video, here's another one.